I don't know, are there questions on this Pier 11 piece? I mean, clearly we need, a follow-up session on that immense piece of real estate at some point between these two very,
Yes.
prominent gateway type buildings that you described, one which has, one sounds utilitarian, one public oriented, but whatever, that really would be great to see, something about that in terms of more detailed drawings, as I'm sure you have. And then the north of there, what is that building to the north, the long bar?
The white,
Yeah,
Yeah. Harrison, do you mind just zooming in there for a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is not currently programmed. It is essentially serving the purpose of creating more of a flat roof space at the higher level. So that is potentially like an occupiable roof area that can become part of the park. And it's a pretty generous space that could be programmed at the street level, facing back to the city in a variety of different ways, but it's not currently designated for any specific purpose yet.
okay. Else, okay, moving north, I know we don't have infinite time, so as much as I could spend the entire night here on these questions. Okay.
So we can.
There's no other shots of no other drawings or images, rather, of any of what we just talked about.
No.
Okay.
But there is of the north, which is the Seaport Piers segment. And so we had kind of focused this presentation on things that had changed the most since the last time, which was more the two ends. I said the middle is just mainly refinements. So Seaport Piers. I think everyone's fairly familiar with the existing conditions, so let's talk about what the previous plan was. So in the previous version, we were primarily what we thought was being conservative and more or less replicating Piers 15 and 16 as they are currently, but just raised, so reconstructed, but higher. And for a variety of reasons, some of them cost-based, phasing-based, but also we've been coordinating quite closely over the last year with the Seaport Museum to understand how best to optimize for their maritime assets. And some of the things that we learned in that process, and we also had, I think, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but like a mariners workshop, or a couple of mariners workshop with various operators.
Maritime and a mariners workshop.
So deep dive into understanding like how these spaces are currently being used, what are some of their limitations, and how could we actually improve this rather than just kind of putting it back the way it was before. And so some of the things that we heard was the way that the double-decker pier at 15 was actually creating problems for berthing vessels, just the way that it was designed. Not necessarily because it was double-decker, but just the way that double-decker was designed. And then also the spacing between 15, 16, and 17 is quite close. And so that limits the functionality. And then as the first costing exercises came in, we also saw that rebuilding a double-decker Pier 15 would add several $100 million to an already expensive project. So we go to the next slide. So the big moves is first to the south of Pier 17, actually rebuilding Pier 16 between where 15 and 16 are today, so consolidating into a little bit larger, wider pier, but more importantly, giving more space between that Pier 16 and Pier 17. we reconfigured a little bit how Pier 16 was meeting the shoreline. And so that whole design has been refined with quite detailed input from the Seaport Museum and is intended to maximize the potential accommodation and berthing of as many historic vessels as possible. And uh, what was more of the, say, publicly oriented Pier 15 gets moved to Pier 19, to a reinstituted Pier 19 that is on access with one of our other gates at Peck Slip, so that at grade access on the street, so more visible, more public, and this we haven't gone into too much detail yet about how this might be programmed, what type of vessels, if any, would berth there. But the concept is that similar to how the route of Pier 15 works today, that you would have this pier be much more public and community oriented. Um, and yeah, so that's really the big moves here that have changed since the last time. Moving towards the Brooklyn Bridge, some of this geometry has been refined a bit, um, but by and large, to the south of this new Pier 16 and to the north of Pier 19, it's just refinements to what has been seen before. The big move is how we kind of change the configuration of the piers and optimize them.
Other slides for this part, where we ask questions, or the addendum group?
You can take questions, and Harrison, you can maybe pull up the boards if that's helpful.
Hey, Rosa, I see your hand is up. So, Rosa.
Thank you.
Hey,
So, hi, how are you guys? So I had a question for you, obviously underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, and how you are going to address that. I couldn't tell from the rendering, first of all, if that is a wall that we are going to see underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, or if that section is elevated. I was wondering if you could clarify.
So, not sure if we have a good view of it in this section. Oh yeah, here we go.
That may be the best one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that the on land portion is elevated, and the lower esplanade actually swings out away from the elevated land, and kind of around that intertidal zone and beach area. And I'm sorry we don't have more images of that design, but it is an evolution of what was in the master plan from 2 years ago. The biggest difference is that we have elevated all of the kind of land side to make this more of a lookout area. I believe at the master plan stage 2 years ago, it was just a wall at that point, and there was an idea of potentially being like an O&M area. So this has been refined to incorporate again one of these buildings that helps kind of hide the flood protection, create an opportunity for more amenity space, and creating more flat raised outdoor space.
And then Rosa, the point farthest north here, where you see the walkway come back in, that's actually kind of an opportunity to, be a get down or have steps. some kind of perhaps like educational, ecological interaction. So that's actually where there's like one of the opportunities to get really like actually closer to the water.
Okay, so that's the intertidal whatever, that loopy thing.
Yeah, the intertidal zone. It just means shallow water that sometimes gets dry.
Is there any possibility for the shallow water that sometimes gets dry to be like so like a toe dip area? Is that essentially what you're saying as a get down, that you would actually get down into the water? And what happens to the natural sand deposits that are happening there now?
Yeah,
So-
so it is. Well, go ahead, John.
So the shoreline is going to be extended, so we are looking for ways to replicate that condition a little bit further out. So yes, the kind of a dip your toe in the water type of thing, some steps or some sort of more ecological treatment. These are some of the concepts that we are looking at and are hoping to incorporate as the design is developed further.
Yeah, so this is one of the areas that can be further kind of workshop inputted in a next phase. I think the other option, similar to what is, on the west side at Gansevoort, we know that there's interest in having something that replicates the beach. It would need to be as it is on Gansevoort Peninsula, it would need to be contained, but it's obviously very well designed there. It reads as a beach, it's occupied as a beach. So there's the potential to do that here too. Again, this will be the subject of more kind of community input and community design workshops, because this is an area where we can bring the design further in the next phase.
Okay, and then one last question is, what is behind that wall?
Which wall?
The wall that was in that rendering. Is it just clean fill, or is there an actual functional use for that space and it's just a wall on the water side?
I don't think we have done a rendering from the city side, but about half of that length is taken up by a building, and the other half would be like a landscape slope and pathway that takes you up. So it kind of slopes up from the city side, from South
Right.
Street.
To get to the elevation you need for the flood wall, but
Mhm.
and that building is going to house. It looked like there was a garage door on the water side. Was that a proper read of the rendering that you had, or?
So this part of it is also gate housing. So similar to
Yeah.
what we saw in the Pier 11 area. So in order for on non-storm condition days to have that, you see essentially there's the flood wall and then there's like the open views to the water.
Mhm.
The gate will need to be housed in that portion of the building underneath where the umbrellas are, right, Travis?
Yeah, and similar to our discussion before at the other end of the project, at this moment, these are more just representative massings. So for this image, one of our designers took a fair bit of liberties in just trying to imagine how this could be used, but there haven't been programmatic decisions made yet for this building. It could be a combination of some operations and maintenance, storage uses on a lower level, and more of especially where there wouldn't be able to be windows because of the flood wall and so forth. And a more amenity function on the second level, utilizing the open patio space.
Maybe a comfort station. We always hear that there need to be kind of
Definitely
more
a comfort
opportunities
station.
for family and comfort stations. So
It's currently sized big enough that you could have on the lower level a comfort station and O&M storage and an amenity space or F&B or something like that up above. So it's big enough to accommodate those things. But we haven't,
Right,
or
right. It's just a
EDC
massing.
hasn't 100% said that that's what they're going to put there.
All right, we've got some other
Okay,
questions.
thank you.
In the room? Thanks, Rosa. Jeff?
Could you go back to the slide that you had at the beginning for this area? Yes. So those arrows from the city side going the shore, which of those represent like breaks in the flood wall, which will have gates or some sort of a deployable?
So,
Beekman and
so the two larger openings will be at Peck Slip and at Fulton. And the kind of area on Pier 17, is that Beekman?
yeah.
So between the so basically between the Tin Building and the Pier 17 building, that that pier, is, I think everyone knows, was recently reconstructed, and it's much higher than everything else around. So it's already going to be at, I think it's at 14 feet, and the plan currently is to have some sort of stop logs or deployables go in between the Tin Building and Pier 17, so that that current condition as it is would stay open. And then, as I said, at Peck Slip and at Fulton would be these larger roller gates that kind of hide into the landscape when they're open.
So the area between Fulton and Beekman, the flood wall area, is contemplated to be basically a deployable there. And what would be the height of intervention there? Not from flood level, but from ground level.
I think they're about 8 feet tall.
Yeah,
8 feet.
8 or 9 feet. Yeah.
Wow. So the design flood level or flood elevation is 20 plus?
Yeah, I guess that's an important thing to note. So our minimum passive elevation is 11. So that's the same height that the Battery Wharf is getting rebuilt to. It's above the level of a 10-year storm. So the idea is that you wouldn't have to close any gates for sea level rise for these more common storms. The upper design flood elevation, it ranges depending on wave action and modeling between 23 and 25 feet. And that is a 100-year storm in the year 2100. So anticipating several feet of sea level rise. And so...
And at that 100-year storm elevation, that's the passive flood wall in most places other than these access points.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so if there was another Hurricane Sandy,
by...
we would need to close those gates.
Okay. And the buried flood wall, so to speak, green areas, you're basically putting in fill and whatnot that takes it up to that elevation of 23 to 25 feet?
Yes, and
So there'll still
and
be
and
though a structure, right? There still will. It's just that it's hidden underneath
mhm.
berm and
No,
fill.
I understand, I understand that, yes, okay, just trying to make sense, okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarification on this slide? Again, so the red dotted line is the flood defense. Of course, that's never incorporated into the landscaping that shows as green here. So I find that very confusing. I hope at some point we'll see that as integrated in a way that we can understand, as I can. But what is the distinction made between the red flood defense hatched line, and then you have underneath it to the north at the Brooklyn Bridge, the wall, this long wall? I'm not trying to do what I'm looking at there. All right. I feel like this may have already been asked, but does everyone know?
Is that the,
So the reason we have the orange dotted line is actually, and you could just you could take it off, but it would be, the flood defense would be kind of imperceptible because it's just part of the actual landscape, until the only part here where it would be exposed is when you get to the north and you actually see that solid, more solid mass. It wouldn't be that color, but it was really just meant to be more instructive so people understood that the flood defense is running all the way through here, even though you don't perceive it.
So the flood defense being hatched, shown as a dotted line, like most symbolic conventions on an architecture plan, is showing something that's under the ground, and then all of a sudden
Yes.
it appears as structure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. All
Yeah.
right. We've got more questions. I'm going to just, because there's people who haven't had a chance to ask a question, is that okay? So Michael Kramer?
Could you speak about the area from John Street up to the Brooklyn Bridge? How much of that is currently funded?
So we don't have any capital funding for construction. We are only funded through this current phase of 30% design.
Alexis, I think he's talking about the SPCR project.
The 228
Oh, I'm
million.
sorry.
Mm.
I was focused on Friday Seaport. So the SPCR project is fully capitally funded. It is 170 million plus 50 million of FEMA brick money.
So what we see here is funded.
No. This is not illustrating the Seaport Coastal Resilience Project, and I believe they are coming at the next meeting to show their update. So in terms of what you are seeing on this slide, none of this is funded.
Yeah, so this is the long-term vision as to that 2100 100-year storm and involves shoreline extension. The SPCR project stays completely on existing land and is only going up to 11. So it's kind of opportunistically raising where it can to that 11 feet as a shorter term project until this one can be built outboard of it.
Okay, and can you zero in on Beekman to Peck Slip and tell us what's happening there?
The new market site.
Yeah. So this is another illustrative, similar to how we have kind of building massing, not programmed. But we did want to, reserve space for some potential future building and use. And so again, it's not funded, but we heard from the community the desire to have a community use on this site. And so we're representing here just kind of what could be space bulk massing. We don't have any program currently, similar to how we don't have a program for the building to the north or the buildings to the south. The only one of these overall that you see that really has a specific program is the pump station and O&M building for the heliport. But the rest of these really are just about kind of reserving space and or where we need to house gates, strategically placing the buildings so that those gates aren't exposed or don't end up being an obstruction in the landscape.
What is the volume of the building that we see there? Height and length?
Is
And
it
width?
3 stories? What is it?
It's
3?
it's virtually the same size as the current tin building, as a reference. I don't remember offhand the exact
The
dimensions,
square
but
footage.
but it's basically the same size as the tin building. That's what's represented here.
Roughly 100 by 200, like the old New Market site.
Yeah.
It's a little bit bigger. Um, it's a little bit longer than what could have been built on the well, I guess now demolished pier.
And thank you, Judah supplied me with dimensionalized drawings,
Good.
which are very helpful, and just wanted
Glad those were.
to
Yeah,
suggest
glad
that
those were helpful.
we may do an architectural charrette there to help consider what might be there.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
David Sheldon.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
3 questions. I think 2 of them are pretty quick. I can see all of these latest schematics on the FiDi Seaport website.
That's a question, I assume.
They are these on the website? You know what? I'm gonna have
I
to
don't know.
check. I haven't been. I do not believe that they
Sure.
are, because these are from our pre-public Climate Coalition of Lower Manhattan. But we are happy, and I've supplied the link to this presentation to Zach. And so we're happy to have it distributed amongst the community board.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like a chance to, more closely study it. Understanding it's a schematic, it's not an architectural draft.
Right.
Would that include this is the second, how you arrive at your water level estimates?
That's in the original published master plan. Harrison, I don't know, has there been more updated modeling since then?
We did do our updated wave modeling using a 2D SWAN model, and it confirmed our previous 1D analysis. So that's why you'll see the design flood elevation staying around that 23-foot level. The primary driver there is we use the present day 100-year storm still water levels. That's just like your static water that you get with storm surge. And then we add on NPCC's 2100 sea level rise prediction, and that at the time of doing the analysis was 6.25 feet.
I think and the 2022 master plan, like the full report, is on the website, and I think goes into detail on the methodology.
I would love to. Okay, that's on this website, right? Okay, I'll look forward to that. I'll dig into it. This is now the third question. This is the one that's a little bigger. I'm trying to understand the economics between demolishing 2 piers, one of which is actually about 20 years old, and then building 2 new ones. I don't understand why that's economical. Please explain.
Building 2 new piers and maintaining the one that's old. Is that what you were asking?
Well, no, perhaps I didn't understand you correctly, in which case I'm glad I'm asking. The idea was to demolish 16 and then rebuild it somewhere to the south of where 17 is. Demolish 16, rebuild it to the south, further south, demolish 15 entirely, and then build a Pier 19.
So maybe, Alexis, I'll start on this one and then hand to you.
Thank you.
So I think the important piece there is that we're extending the shoreline out by 100 some feet in this area. And so in order to do that, you're demolishing a quarter to a third of those piers already. So that's part of it, is that a certain part of it is getting blown through just from the construction of the caissons and the shoreline extension. The second piece is that both of those piers are rather low lying, and so with sea level rise and storms are not going to be resilient into the long term. So those are the
Harrison,
two
do you mind
main
actually
justifications.
sorry, to the boards and the first image. So, and it's hard to keep this in your mind, but if nothing were done, if there were no FIDI Seaport Coastal Flood Resilience Project, those piers basically would, by the 2080s, be compromised just at high tide, so twice daily.
And so I mentioned this at the beginning of this section. When we made the first master plan 2 years ago, what we were looking at then was trying as much as possible to maintain them in place. There was a study looking at whether it would be possible to retain piles and just raise in place and so forth. And essentially, the result of the various studies was that it just really wasn't feasible to build this project and keep any portion of those piers. So they were going to have to be reconstructed anyways. And then once that decision was made that they were going to have to be reconstructed, that's when we went with Seaport Museum and other mariner stakeholders to look at, well, if we have to replace them anyways, how would it be best to optimize it?
Did you say that they would be flooded at high tide within 20 years?
At 28, this is a 2080
2080.
high tides. So that would be twice daily in 2080. By 2050, Pier 16, I believe, would see kind of the monthly, right, be totally inundated during the monthly king tides, moon tides.
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay.
I therefore see if you're going to take 100 feet off the length of Pier 16 and then build a Pier 19, that does appear to be less waterfront berth.
Yes, there's a net reduction in total linear frontage, which is why we did the optimization exercise to see how we could make it more functional for berthing.
Right. So part of the issue is, even as you are extending the land, you can't go farther than the pier head line.
No, there's a pier head line, I understand.
Right.
Have you considered an L-shaped pier?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of different configurations.
But you still came up with less linear footage.
Well, and we work, as I mentioned, we're working both with the mariner stakeholders, but also with our maritime design consultant. And paradoxically, it's less about the total linear footage than the operational capacity for where you can park boats, where you can move them into. And because of the kind of constrained dimensions, they kept coming back to us and saying that the L shape was going to be, and other variations, we looked at various dog legs, that it was going to be less efficient, and we would get more bang for our buck with a wider spacing of finger piers.
Well,
operationally.
Bang for your buck, consider the effect of wakes on any boat that's
Sure.
there. By the way,
Yes.
I am one of your maritime consultants. I do appreciate your answers here. I do, and the information you provided.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks. Alice, I know we have several more slides that we were hoping to get through tonight. If you'd like, we're happy to just kind of roll through those and maybe answer questions at the end, or I'm happy to continue answering questions as is, however you want to do it.
Yeah, no, let's do it by section, but for the other slides on this section, if you could just scroll through those now, and then we'll go on to, I guess it was the south again, to the battery town, southern part.
I do have a question on this section, Alice.
Okay, so there's another question on this section. We are gonna have to speed it up. It's obviously there can't be all either. Okay, Richard.
I don't know if I missed it, but is there a rendering of what this looks like from the city side and what access looks like? As the wall is raised up, as the level is
I don't think
26
I don't think there is in this deck. We had a view from the city side in the master plan from 2 years ago, and that'll be one of the views that will be updated. But I don't think we currently have one.
Yeah, so that view is online in the master plan. And then we haven't done an updated rendering from the city side, but we will probably as part of the next public round this summer.
Okay,
Anybody else? Okay, so you want to bring us through the other boards of this before you move on to the next section, please?
Here you go, Travis. You want to talk about?
Yeah, so the boards here starts with the existing conditions, and then we have a series of kind of sketch perspectives. If we scroll down, there's some sketch perspectives of where, from different viewpoints, this would look like. There's some technical diagrams, but probably what you're most interested in is the renderings, or the sketch renderings. So this one I think is rather helpful to see in 3D. Those two piers, and as David Sheldon was asking about the linear footage. One of the tweaks, the very recent tweak to this design was actually extending the esplanade. Can you point to that, Harrison? Yeah. So
Yeah,
increasing capacity along the primary bulkhead as well to make up for some of the lost length of pier. So yeah, so this view gives you an idea of how the redesigned area will work, and then we have some more eye-level renderings on the third board. So this one, this one's from the upper level esplanade, looking back down, and I think this lower one is, I forget, is this Fulton?
Yeah.
Or Pack Slip? Yeah, sorry.
Fulton.
So here you're seeing again this strategy of anchoring these gateways with smaller amenity buildings that we can kind of hide where would otherwise be exposed gate and flood wall.
Right, so this is a different view of the one that when Rosa was asking, I was saying underneath those umbrellas is where the gate would be housed. Yeah, and you kind of can see tracks there. That's because the gate, when it is deployed, needs to run along those tracks.
If I could just use your pointer and just identify that, I'm sorry, can you show me where the tracks are for us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see it, yeah, okay, thank you. I got it.
Yeah, so they're just light gray here. They'll be virtually
Oh, yeah.
imperceptible, but you will see them, in the paving, and that's necessary for the deployment of the gate.
Okay.
And then we already spent time on that one. So
Right. Oh, and there's like an illustration of the deployed gates too. If you just go up a little bit.
Go
that
back.
orange.
Little diagrams underneath, yeah. Those,
Yeah.
those-
Yeah.
I forgot that we had that last image in here, since Rose had been asking about kind of the Brooklyn Bridge Beach area. So that the last rendering after this gates comparison shows some of the
Ecological and get down.
some of the ideas here. So everywhere else in south of here, the lower level esplanade is kind of attached to some sort of sloping wall. Here we pulled it away so that this shallower water here, there would be potentially an opportunity for some sorts of ecological enhancements, or actually steps that would get you down to the water, potentially kayak launch and so forth. So very sketchy, but these are kind of the concepts that are being explored for that area. Yeah, so some precedents from around the city.
There's there's the Gansevoort Beach.
Yep.
And so yeah, I think that's all the supplementary images that we had.
If there are no more questions on this, our remaining slides are on the southern tie-in and the battery, and they're from our most recent workshop.
Do we have any? Okay, so we're going to move on to the
battery. And now I get to hand it back to Harrison.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Yeah, so this is one part of the site that has kind of been lacking behind. So we've always known that we need a closed compartment, but we're doing a lot of work on the rest of the site. So out of that most recent workshop was our first work to look at what that alignment could look like. So I have a subset of the slides that we had presented to that large workshop, and I have a whole bunch in the appendix too if you have any questions. But I'll walk through this. Please feel free to ask me questions. All right. So the first piece here is, in order to protect the entire FIDI seaport compartment, in order to provide comprehensive flood defense, we need to route the flood wall that you can see here ending at the combined ferry terminal to somehow either connect to high ground or to connect to the South Battery Park City project that has its terminus kind of at the top of battery, at the top of the battery. And in order to do that, there's a really complex maze of infrastructure that exists, along State Street, in the battery, and obviously, battery coastal resilience on the wharf is in construction right now. So what we did is, as a part of the last CCLM, we had identified 2 different zones that this alignment could go through. And the first zone is through the upland right-of-way. So the idea here is to cross in front of the Playscape and then get onto State Street and then run the alignment along State Street to high ground near Bowling Green. The second option was the Battery Upland Zone, where instead of crossing over onto State Street, we run through the battery to connect to South Battery Park City here. One key thing that I want to call out here is the subway tunnels and all the tunnels. So as you can see, as you can kind of see it on this end, we have the 1 train, we have the 4-5 train, and then we have the RW train over here on Whitehall Street. So kind of to the north, we are bounded by subway tunnels. And then to the south, we have the Hewlett Carey and the Battery Park underpass. So two vehicular tunnels that also provide a big constraint for where we can drive piles, which means where can we put flood defense. So any questions here before I jump into kind of the alignments that we studied from these two zones?
No, go ahead.
Thanks. Okay. So from those zones, we put our heads together and we looked at a couple different alignments. I'm going to start with the ones that we pursued for further study. So there are two alignments here that exist in the right-of-way on State Street. So this first one crosses State Street and would then have to run adjacent to all of the buildings and then connects up to high ground at Bowling Green. The second option here crosses next to the Battery Playscape and then runs along the sidewalk on the other side of State Street. This would be the Battery adjacent option. And similar to option one, it runs along the street and then crosses to get to Bowling Green to tie into high ground. And then the third option here avoids the adjacent tunnels and runs through the Battery and connects up to South Battery Park City. And then a small kind of like pony wall would then be constructed to connect up to 17.5 feet. And I can talk more about that on another slide. So we evaluated all three of these options. And the key takeaway here is that alignment 1 that runs along State Street next to the buildings and alignment 2 that runs along State Street next to the park both would require really significant bridging structures, which are basically bridges you have to build on top of subway tunnels in order to be able to put flood protection on top of it. And I have further slides in the appendix if we want to talk more about bridging structures. The key takeaway is these are massive structures and they're extremely expensive and intensive to construct. So as a best practice, we try to avoid them wherever possible. So alignment 3, looking at these suite of options, is the least technically challenging. It has the smallest impact to transit and buildings in the neighborhood, and is the lowest cost compared to alignment 1 and alignment 2. And I have additional detail to talk about for that alignment 3 that we can walk through, just so you can maybe think about more what this would look like. So from the technical feasibility, the terminus of the flood wall is kind of right here at the ferry terminal. In order to cross and head to high ground, we do need to build one bridging structure. And this bridging structure is needed to cross the Battery Park underpass. And you can kind of see a little axon here of what that looks like. So here we have a T-wall and then a large platform that has piles on either end. And the purpose here is it's not feasible to build this T-wall on top of the tunnel without intersecting it. And obviously, if you intersect the tunnel no longer works. So after we cross this tunnel, we then have to route through the Battery to connect up to South Battery Park City. And since South Battery Park City was constructed to defend against the 2050s 100-year storm, it has a significantly lower design flood elevation. I think out here on the water, it's around 18.5. And as a reminder, our project is designed for the 2100 100-year storm. So that ends up being around 23 feet or up to 25, including like some pretty extreme wave action. But the key piece here is the Stillwater elevation. And in that case, their Stillwater for South Battery Park City, their still water elevation is closer to 15. So in the event of a design storm of Five Eyes magnitude, where you have 17.5 feet of water due to surge, you'd see overtopping here. And in order to prevent that overtopping from coming into the Five Eyes Seaport compartment, there's a small L wall that would be constructed here that is short enough to where it doesn't need piles and doesn't need bridging structures, which greatly reduces the cost to do any kind of intervention here. Okay, I talked a lot. I can pause here in technical feasibility. If there are no questions, I can move to public realm so you can start to think about what this would actually look like as a pedestrian.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
Great.
And if it's all right with you all, Travis is still on, but I was actually going to let him go if no one has more questions for him. He's on vacation with his family, so I wanted to let him.
Lucky too. Does anyone have any more questions for Travis before we go back on vacation? I mean, I guess we can address you, Alexa, for the sort of follow-up questions.
Yeah. If there's any follow-up on the design portions, I will of course.
Travis, thank you so much. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, so now we're back to the
Harrison, you're not going anywhere. Goodbye.
Great. Okay, so for the purposes of thinking very conceptually about what this could look like, when you're down at the ferry terminal and moving north, there's a portion of that flood wall that is going to be exposed. Most likely the portion that exists on the bridging structure, because we don't want to add more loading to that structure, because that, similar to any kind of platform, putting any additional fill increases the size of the piles, then increases the size of the physical bridge, which then drives up cost. So you'd probably see a little bit of exposed wall here, and then we've placed these gates along the alignment where there's existing walkways through the battery. But there will be a gate here, kind of continuing what Travis was talking about earlier with this view of South Street to the battery. As you move forward, there are a lot more opportunities here because the tunnels are much farther away, where we can actually fully bury the flood wall. So the only thing that would be visible would be a large berm. And that provides like kind of the greatest opportunity to integrate it into the park without keeping the flood protection visible. And as you get closer up to these tunnels, you're probably once again looking at some sort of partially buried wall. And when you reach South Battery Park City, that's what I was talking about earlier, where instead of a wall that is, 6 to 15 feet is what we call it here, you're looking at a wall that's much shorter. That could be, only 2 to 3 feet sticking up out of the ground. And, how that's expressed could be a seat wall. There are a lot of opportunities there since the height of the intervention is so much smaller. Now, there are still some considerable park impacts. So with this alignment and with this berm allowing up and over access, we do disrupt the current location of the Sea Glass Carousel. And then if this berm needs to extend both north and south, there are possible impacts to the urban farm. And additionally, in order to construct this alignment, in order to construct any alignment in the battery, you would see some tree loss. But out of the 3 alignments that we studied, this one has the greatest opportunity to be integrated into the park and hidden. similar to how the flood protection is conditioned on the rest of the Final Seaport project. I have a view on the next slide, which shows a very concept level before and after of what this could look like. Obviously, with our stakeholder workshop series that we're doing with the battery, we'll explore and find a preferred view for this. So this is the before looking out onto the lawn. And this would be after the flood wall is constructed. So in this area, we're pretty low in the battery. So the ground elevations are on +11, which means that we have about a 13-foot high wall in order to reach +24 due to the high wave action here. But as you can see, as you move farther into the battery, where the tunnels are still spaced, this could just be hidden under some large occupiable landform. And then gateways would be placed strategically in order to provide, at-grade access. So after this, we get into next steps. So maybe we pause here to discuss the battery.
I think you all can tell from this rendering, this is not at the same level of design as Harrison said and the rest of the project. But the purpose and what I'll speak to in kind of our upcoming workshop cadence is to have considerable community input in order to get this to the same level of design as the rest of the master plan.
Okay. Zach has a question. Zach?
Yeah, just curious, the reason you don't follow the coast, is it because the wall would be so high at the coast, or is it the crossing of the tunnel is problematic?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there are a few reasons. The area that you see like outlined in red is actually currently under construction. And that is also a resilience elevation project where they're elevating the wharf, the Battery Wharf, which is, what we call that whole area of the right along the coastline, so that it will be protected against sea level rise. So that daily tidal flooding that will happen by 2050 and 2080, it's being elevated now so that sea level rise will not imperil the battery. If we were to put the seawall right along the waterfront there, there would be a few kind of substantial impacts. One is that obviously this is a cherished cultural space with views of the Statue of Liberty and harbor. Generally the entire kind of New York City wide policy about coastal resilience is we don't build walls on our waterfront. One of the things we love about being in Lower Manhattan is actually having views of our waterfront and being able to enjoy it. And so not only would it be higher there, it would actually be a really hefty wall. And the reason is because the amount of wave energy and wave action coming into this area is like the strongest in some of all of the like New York Bight, New York Harbor. And it's basically because like all of the energy from the hurricane is coming up underneath the Verrazano into a narrowed space, and it's all hitting right here. That's my non-engineering version of that. But the wave action during a hurricane is really intense here. And so you'd also just need a massive structure. Those are kind of two of the more important kind of critical issues with building at the waterfront. There are then a few other minor, I mean, yes, you would have to cross the Hugh L. Carey tunnel. It's not clear to me what the underground condition is there, but I think the wharf probably isn't built right now to sustain the additional weight and height of the wall. But I think probably the most compelling reason is that we really don't, you know, the battery wouldn't be the battery if it didn't have the views of the harbor and of the Statue of Liberty.
Other questions? Okay, other slides, appendices we should be aware of?
Wendy has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Wendy, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm sure like everybody, this is a sobering, you know, plan, and it's one of those things that I'm sure you did study the other alignments, but to hear that the sea glass carousel, for example, would have to be relocated, and those photos are pretty jarring. You know, I guess that, you know, it has to be done, but what could you do to, you know, are you planning to relocate the sea glass carousel, or what? You just mentioned it, but you didn't say what that meant.
Yeah, and I can clarify there. So this definitely isn't a design in any shape. This is just a line on paper, where the stakeholder engagement series that we've kind of started and that Alexis will talk about in a couple slides, that is the process that will define where this line will go. So the sea glass carousel is kind of located right where my cursor is. There is definitely optionality to where this wall could run closer to the water and then curve back in to where the sea glass carousel could stay in place. There are just trade-offs there with how much exposed wall you then have versus how much fully buried wall you have. So that's kind of one of the things that we're going to talk about through that engagement series.
Right. It's going to be hard for the public to wrap its head around. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the decision actually has not been made. We're not far enough along in design to say really whether it has to move or not. But that's part of like through the workshops, we're exploring that with the community and kind of trying to be very transparent about, like, you know, if it goes here, it may have to move. If we want an exposed wall, it may not have to move, but kind of bringing everyone along with that thinking and decision making.
And Ushma.
Hi, thank you for all. There's a lot of information in the last 2 hours. I know you've heard. I just saw that, and you have here about the trees. I just feel like so many trees have been lost in downtown Manhattan, like with all the work done on the west side down below. And then I know the Battery did so much work on reworking their part, and we're going to pull that up. Can you talk? Are you going to save like those trees, or can more trees be put somewhere else? Just, I feel like we need to repopulate the tree population.
Yeah. No, this is a really, really important consideration. And, you know, I think, as we described in part of the overarching principles of this project, we understand how important trees are, not only to like heat mitigation, but also carbon sequestration, and not, you know, contribute. We've always said, like, we don't want to be further contributing to the problem that we're trying to mitigate for, which is why we're in this situation. There are, as part of our next workshop, we actually go through a pretty extensive inventory of everything within the Battery, that again should be a consideration of trade-offs, and we look at what trees may be disturbed as part of kind of the zone of construction, and which might be an area where we would have to actually like replant outside of the flood wall. Harrison didn't take you through all of the extensive analysis here. Yeah, we have here kind of like
I just thought it was
very
removed.
roughly outlined trees that would fall into that zone. When we looked at the other two alignments actually going along the edge of the battery, the number of mature trees that needed to be disturbed for that was actually much larger. And so we do have some comparison of like the various alignments and what level of tree disturbance there is. There definitely will, and again, we don't take it lightly, but there definitely will be impacts to some trees. And I think that's something that we want to discuss with the community and kind of have everyone understand what those trade-offs are, and then also what can be accomplished in terms of replanting. But there's no tie-in scenario here where there would be like not a single tree lot. You know,
No, I understand that. I think my comment is more about we look at each alignment separately. Like we spent a lot of time looking at the alignment. I don't know if it's like up by Northmore, right? Or we spent a lot of time looking at Wagner Park. And I get that you have to move things around, even the amount of stuff that was taken out of the battery in the last year. But why can't we like take everything below a certain amount and say, well, we moved and disrupted all of these trees. How can we have like a net neutral or net positive? It may not be right. Like you took this tree out here,
right there,
18 trees here, but why can't you get the Battery Park City to put 15 more? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
within the mile or within the 2 miles seems good enough to me. Practically.
So I can't speak for Battery Park City Authority, but from a city parks perspective, and they're not on the call, but they will be at our workshop. That is actually one of their policies that, you know, in terms of any, like, there's not an overall net loss. So you replant. And they're definitely committed to kind of that overall principle of replanting. And so the project will be as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Anyone? And other images to show? Are we at the end here?
This is it for the presentation. I did really quickly, just because we've alluded to these workshops coming up, and I did just want to run through that, and then if there are additional questions. So we're doing a really focused effort and sprint, although it's across, you know, 3 months, that's focused on the battery, and engaging with the community and having community input is really, really important into ultimately what will be the outcome of this design and what it will look like and what it will feel like. As I said, we're at a very, very early stage of even just understanding the alignment, but what will help mitigate the impacts will be ultimately having a design that, you know, both speaks to the current character of the park and also meets community needs. So we've set up a series of workshops. We already had our workshop number 1, and Harrison just did an abbreviated version of that in these slides. Our second workshop really starts to get into kind of like both an inventory of all of the various things within the park, and also understanding trade-offs based on the alignment, and kind of starts to look at precedents of look and feel. That is going to be in March, about a month from now. We haven't sent out the actual hold, but it will be, I think, on March 21st. We'll get those out next week. We would really love participation from as much of the CB1 community as possible. Again, we know how important this is as your local park. Then we will have 2 more workshops, and the third workshop will be based on kind of what we accomplished in the second workshop, understanding programmatic needs, look and feel. The design team will come back with kind of more design, more realistically rendered idea of what the actual expression of the flood wall will look like in the park. And so that will happen probably in April. We don't have that date set yet. And all of this ultimately will culminate in a public open house similar to the one that we held in the summer of 23. If you go to the next slide, this is basically just all of the words that cover what I said about what the goals for the next meeting are. So again, we're moving forward with a recommended alignment that has yet to be designed. And so what we need from you all and what we're hoping to achieve is understanding kind of the open space integration opportunities, what the various impacts could be and how we could mitigate those. And then walking through trade-offs, constraints, and opportunities, and then also really getting just feedback about what's most important to the future of the battery and what we want it to look like. So we hope that you all can join us. It will be a very active conversation. And again, we'll publicize the date next week, and we would just ask that CB1 distribute it amongst your constituents.
This is great, Alexa. Thank you so much, and thank you all for the extraordinary amount of time and input. Couple of questions. One, can you put all of the renderings, including the appendices, on your website so that the public can access them and review them? Seems odd.
Yeah, we can. We haven't. Generally, what we do is we put all of the kind of public open house materials on our website. But let me talk to our web folks. I don't think it's a problem. And I'll talk to GovCo. And as I said, we'll make these even in a sooner time frame available to CB1, and you can feel free to distribute them.
Yeah,
I'll get you a timeline on when they can go up on our website. It usually just takes longer.
Yeah, I can't imagine why you wouldn't put this as a public document. You've done all the others, and these have been seen, and now even tonight they're out. So I just think it would be really
Yeah, no, there's no reason not to. It's just a time frame. We're not as fast as you guys are.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the last documents I see on your website, and I could be wrong, were from September 23. That's not yesterday. So we really, I mean, we're talking 25, and then let's bring it up to date.
Yeah,
there's a lot of new stuff, of course. Two is when do we get to see, or what would be useful to you from the community's perspective to engage on the next phase of the rest of the plant, not just the battery, but when would the workshop for the rest of the ferry terminals and all the way north be happening? Like, how does that start to get?
So honestly, what would be most useful, because as I mentioned, like we are wrapping up this phase of work essentially this summer is when our funding and the current contract needs to be wrapped up. We obviously have the intention, as we've shown throughout the last 5 years of this project, to continue to advance design with the public, but we don't have funding right now beyond this summer. And so any kind of future workshops on the Southern Ferry Hub, in order to advance that design, in order to advance the design of the areas that we saw today beyond what we kind of currently have in technical documentation, would be subject to getting more funding from the city, which is, the ask that we have in front of them now.
So this is it from now until the summer in terms of our being able to see anything?
The battery workshops will continue. That's going to be a focus area of outreach. And then we will have a public open house this summer. But what that public open house is going to represent is, the culmination of all of the design changes leading up to that point. And then we don't have money beyond the summer in order to continue design.
So is everyone understanding that, I just want to make sure I've got this right, just in terms of trying to engage the community board with these designs, that this is sort of it until the summer for everything north of the battery? Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, there won't be any.
No, what you saw today isn't it. What you'll see this summer is it, as in the culmination of the design based on our current funding.
after the summer, and at the summer point, that'll be 10%.
30%. 10% of all the topside elements, 30% of all of the underlying coastal resilience infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's it. Okay.
Including the battery alignment?
Yes, yeah, that's why we're really focused on getting that up to the same levels design as the rest of the master plan.
And is there an opportunity to see more images of what, I mean, I always love the fact that, everyone's flying in from LaGuardia Airport to see these plans. When do we get to see it at ground level, looking at a perspectival understanding of what these spaces will really be like? Are there any more images that provide that? Richard Corman wisely asked from the city side out.
Yeah, that will be part of the final deliverable this summer. So
we won't see until August.
Yeah, well, probably a little bit, yeah, I guess it would be August. It would either be June, but if we can't fit it into June, the idea was that July and August are not great times for open house. So it'd probably be either the end. If we don't get it in June, it would probably be end of August or early September.
Okay, because we're closed in August, so we really, as a board, would want to see this. So maybe you can do something for us in June. It doesn't have to be every drawing, but if we could get some sort of presentation prior, so we could have a say in what we're seeing, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll talk to the design team. I think at that point we would at least have, let's say it's not like the full rendering, but we would have the various views laid out. That we would then refine for public consumption, but I think probably we would have some sense of that by June.
Okay, so it might be, would it be helpful if this committee and the board were to consider a resolution on these plans as of today? It's not happening tonight, but to consider maybe we do a resolution. Would that be helpful so that you have a sense of what we've talked about and some of the questions that the board might have? And
yeah, no, I mean, we would be very open to a resolution. I think also just, one of the things that I really appreciate about your board is that, your sustained support for all of these projects. You've been on a journey in all of the LMCR portfolio, but it's really like your strong support that has been able to marshal the resources in order to have these projects be a priority and keep going. And of course, FIDI Seaport remains the large gap in the overall full protection of the compartment. And so would also just really appreciate CB1's sustained support in making sure that the design, does advance and that we can get to environmental review in order to ensure the long-term implementability of the project.
Yeah, that was what I was going to suggest. The funding. Resolution about the funding.
Yeah, well, I guess there might be two parts to this resolution, or maybe two resolutions.
Yeah, I mean, the design, obviously, we are always wanting your feedback on the design and memorializing that, and I think that's fine. But anything that could also just say that this is really important to this community and that you don't want the project to stop.
Do you see any obstacles at this moment to that funding? What's been your preliminary assessment of where it stands in the council and in the administration?
So just where we are in the budget cycle, essentially, like we've put in for funding as part of the January plan. We were not included as a priority project in that. And so the next opportunity is there's an April executive budget, and that's the one that goes to council. Ultimately, council gets to vote and approve on the final adopted budget as part of fiscal year 26. And so, they'll have an important voice and say in whether or not the project gets included in the adopted budget.
And what's the amount that you're projected?
We asked for 15 million to continue environmental review and design. That will basically get us through the two years, the next 2 years. 15 million to complete environmental review and continue design.
That's the 2-year view.
Big view.
Yeah.
So I don't want to leave, you all don't have to stick around for our conversation about the resolution unless, although you're welcome to. But I think that'll be our next task. So I think if I'm hearing right, we're at the end of this presentation and I don't see any other up in the room or online. So I'm going to say.
Just clarification on the budget. The budget money that you're seeking now is from
City.
to address a resolution too. And
Yeah.
if it's just the city, then we know who to address it to. So, okay.
Yep. Yeah, it would be, we need it in the adopted city budget.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so now we're done, right, with this phase. And are you comfortable with the concept of maybe doing a resolution? I just want to let these folks go because it is 8:30. These folks go. Goodbye. Thank you very much for an incredible presentation and patience in providing it. And we'll be in touch potentially for resolution. And we'll look forward. I assume that the next moment we will see you will be March 21st for this workshop. And you'll let us know and start to organize around the June date for us to have the 10-30% review of the rest of the plans. That's done, right?
Yes. Yep.
That's great. Okay.
All right.
Again.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for your support, and thanks for the commitment to the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we just have the committee members online and here. So are we, this is interesting because I didn't think of a resolution at the time. I mean, I think it's like an only opportunity to say what we might consider as working and not working about these plans, such as we've seen, in addition to maybe supporting or not the financing of this. So do we, as a committee, want to do a resolution? I could suggest, given the late hour that we have one other to review, we could, maybe just quickly throw down some points that, I don't know, or hash it out at the next meeting. I don't know. What do you think? Do you want, the first question, do you want to write a resolution?
In support of the funding.
Well, okay, that's part of the resolution. Do you want to have any comments on the Tie-Dye Seaport Master Plan as a board? You representing the board, or do you like everything that you've seen and you don't want to say anything more than that? I personally have plenty to say and would want to put things in writing about some of our concerns and some of the things that we've already addressed earlier about the Tie-Dye Seaport Master Plan, changing of the piers, the need for recreation space, the, highlighting the need for really understanding what will happen at the New Market building, the touchdown stuff. I think we might want to just review that in a resolution. But
I'm thinking that maybe there's two resolutions. The one that's most time sensitive is the budget. The things that you're talking about, I'm not sure how we can hammer out unless we're going to spend another couple of hours here tonight.
Right.
And that's not as early, we do that the next meeting.
Because the summer we'll have more clarity on what they're doing, right? They're presenting or there's going to be engagement or something in the summer. After August.
Well, the summer is when they're done with their 10 and 30%. So whatever then it'll be. You could, yes, it's another time, but you could have a conversation about it. Yeah, that's what I'm asking the committee what they think. So you're saying, let's wait until July, I guess.
I think it would be helpful to focus them on our current concerns, assuming that besides you, Alice, that there are others that have thoughts on that matter.
Totally, yeah. So.
But I think tonight is not the time to do it.
Tonight is funding.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Richard or Jeff, you can work together on deciding you.
Wendy on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wendy.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I enjoy everything, but I think one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again is they're really going to go dark when the funding runs out. And I agree, there's a ton of different things that I would like or not like, but if they miss the first opportunity for the budget and they're, now this is the next opportunity for April, I think we just give a simple, we support, this being continued funding, just leave it at that. And we then go into how we like it next, because I think we know, especially given what's happening on the federal level right now, it's a grim time for budgets. So everyone's going to be scrambling, and the city's going to be impacted. It's already being impacted. Money's already being pulled away from the city. So we just need to give a straight, we support this, and, hopefully the city will figure out a way to fund it, because I think I heard more than once is that they are going to run funding, and then that's it. They're going dark.
Okay, so Zach, I realize Zach can help us out here, so, and particularly because it isn't that nuanced, I don't think. So are there other things that you'd like to include besides what Wendy's just stated, sort of simple fact, we support this, but things that you'd like to?
I mean, we could have a handful of whereases of the importance in general of this project. That Sandy, we've been advised before that on the federal level, there are very narrow windows to get the capital. Forget about what's happening in Washington right now. In the best of times, there are very narrow windows in Washington where you can get the funding that's going to be required for the construction. And they were optimistically hope if we're going to get this done before 2040 or whatever, they need to hit the 2026 budget cycle, whatever bill, the water bill that comes every 2 or 4 years or whenever it comes. And if they miss that, then it's a minimum of 2 more years and maybe more likely 4 more years. And the only way they're going to hit that is to get this $15 million now from the city. If this is delayed by a year, it may delay the project by 4 years. So I think we would recite some of that. We can dig it up from what we've been told before.
Jeff, I don't understand your timing, but I agree with your logic. Yeah.
Okay, other things that you'd like to put in the resolution? I think we're in agreement here because these 2 points, Wendy's and Jeff.
Funding it's critical.
Okay, so can you just, do you mind doing a version of this and we'll
Draft and.
Yes, send it to me.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I think that we're agreed that we'll do, I think Tammy may want to have, her thoughts on, because I just want to finish with this point before I go. I personally think we should probably say a couple of things about the plans themselves. So I don't know, are people against that idea? Again, not this meeting, but the next one, maybe we have.
I think it makes sense to point them in. If we think they're marching in the wrong direction on something, let them know now rather than at the 30%.
Right.
Similarly, if we think they're going in the right direction, we can let them know now, or just give them some general guidelines that can guide them as they march towards 2030. I just don't think we have time tonight.
Okay, so we're going to do that at
resolution. Yeah, I 2 separate resolutions.
Okay, so we've agreed on that, and we will do the second resolution if we have time next month. And in the meantime, I'll give a short presentation and summary of the board, but the board will ask the board to opine, to consider these plans. We'll pass along whatever presentation they're going to give us to the board, and then we'll, opine and close down that aspect of the project until August or whenever it comes to us next. Okay. We all agree. I'm sorry, just because this is within the board, and so I wanted to make sure I finished the.
It's just really quick. So I'm an NYU journalism student, and I'm writing a story about the redevelopment plan. And I was just wondering if any of you guys would be willing to give me your name and email. If you would be willing to answer more questions or later.
Well, our board chair, Tammy Meltzer, who's not here tonight, who usually is a fixture at every meeting, but not tonight. You could have spoken to her directly, but we'll give you her number. She has to approve anyone talking to you. It's going to be published.
It's probably not. It's for a class.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I don't think there's any regulations. So anybody who, I'm happy to talk to you, I'm sure there's, everyone in this room would be happy,
I
but,
mean, it's just gonna be like, I'll just email you like a short list of
okay,
questions.
so,
That's good.
fine,
Why
In
don't
the
you give me
meantime-
your email?
yeah.
And I'll distribute
Thank
it.
Oh,
you. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so let's move on to the last order of business tonight, which is, and thank you for coming and good luck with your project. Okay, so the last thing was this odd public notice that we got that we actually didn't get. So I don't know if you all got a chance to look at it. It was circulated and we happen to have a couple of copies that we made just in case.
Last night online.
Yeah, so really what's extraordinary about it, and I don't know, Jeff, if you had gotten wind of it, but, this came to me through someone on the Hudson Advisory Board, who got it from somebody else. In other words, the community board never was given this public notice that was provided by the Battery Park City Authority to, it's a request for the permit for their project to the, Army Corps of Engineers. And in this process, there should be public response, and this was a notice that allowed for a public response, so we, the public, did not know about it. So that's a problem, and I'm not sure how we solve it, but we are running our elections to make sure that never happens again, because it's crazy our board didn't know about it. So this is our opportunity to basically, and I attached this resolution, allow the Army Corps of Engineers to know the concerns of this board about this project. In other words, when we looked over the DEIS, we had 4 or 5 pages here, which all fits around, thank you, Zach, of concerns that, you know, and so the Army Corps is involved in the out of water, you know, the in water rather, in water construction, right? Not the land. So can you bring up that map? Because that would be helpful. So, you know, we're not gonna spend all night on every detail here, but what I'm suggesting is we have a resolution that supports the resolution that we wrote in, September and highlight those aspects that are the in-water points. And so we went over many things in this resolution. And I assume you looked at it, so you know, but that would be my suggestion to expedite things this evening is, you know, to pull out something we've already voted on and highlight this.
Is there another copy of the resolution?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there,
Alice, I
Right,
have a
so-
question here,
yeah.
which is that the issue date is February 5th and the expiration is March 7th.
That's exactly
What does that mean? Does
That-
that mean any point in responding?
Yeah, well, March 7th is in today, that's exactly why we brought it to committee.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay. No, the deadline will be at the community board that it works. So we will be able to write a resolution and have the board vote on it, saying, this is, you know, we're gonna talk about the process of not having to have the public notice. We're gonna talk about those aspects that we find in our resolution on the Battery Park City Authority's DEIS. And I think that's it. But if there's things that are specific to the region and
And also,
you
it
know,
says that any person may request in writing before this notice expires that a public hearing be held to collect
Yeah.
information
we didn't have time for that.
to consider. Okay.
Yeah, that was a level of, you know,
Um,
that we didn't have.
Well, but I have a couple of
Good.
points. One is, but maybe Zach, you can contact the Army Corps and find out how we get on their distribution list. This notice was sent by the Army Corps. I don't know where their distribution list.
You might think it would be to Goldman's office or the state offices or any of these or the city. I mean, I don't know who got it, but nobody passed it on to us.
Right. And,
So that's a good question.
and so whatever the distribution list is, we should at least get on it from now forward because there's likely to be other
Yep.
Army Corps
Maybe up.
activity. I'm not sure we need to do much more than just pass our resolution, I would, you know, in bold. Rather than us trying to figure out which ones impact, because there, I mean, we can highlight we can go through our however many page resolution and highlight the ones that relate to the specific, I mean, their notice goes reach by reach. And says whether or not there is Army Corps regulated work, and if so, where it is. But I think to a large extent, I think what they are considering is only indirectly related to the points that we've made.
Well, there's one that's directly related.
Yeah, can you tell me? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it where it is. I know the one that, the Hudson River Park.
Yeah.
The CSO and the whole idea of the estuary being used for that, outflow versus going, south. This is something that, Tom Fox had provided and written for the City Club and also for the Hudson River Park Advisory Council, and that I think we should highlight, because we did agree with that, and I'm not sure where it ends up here, but it's in there somewhere, and I think we should just make sure that's in there, because I think that's a really important point that we didn't really think about when we wrote our original resolution, but I think we did ultimately add it in, if I'm not mistaken. If we did, we should. We did, right? It is in there,
And
right?
we do have a wetland section in there, so we can.
Yes, we do.
Becky has her hand up.
So,
Water and sewer.
oh,
I don't want to hop out of turn. I heard someone acknowledge me just a second ago. I'm Becky with the Battery Park City Authority. If you don't know me, I just wanted to let you guys know, just as far as this information goes, we did not submit any new information to this. This is a joint application that we have with the Army Corps of Engineers. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that, like, we did not put any new information in. This is the same information that we came with last summer. So, just to kind of help that part of the process out for you guys.
yeah, no, that was, yeah, I noticed it seemed to be similar, although I must say I never saw these plans, the one that, can you just, the one, can you put
I think
us away?
there were appendices in
The plan that was, I thought very helpful was this one from Arcadis that I don't remember seeing, I'm sure it was there, was very clear with the in-water work, with out-water work. I never knew about, and so the in-water work is the dog gray. I never knew all that there was so much in-water work. I guess you realized
I
that?
did.
Yeah, so I wasn't paying enough attention, I'll confess, but I did not realize, the three around the basin, I didn't know.
Well, yeah, Reach 5 is a ton of them.
No, Reach 5 I knew, Reach 6 I didn't know, and Reach 4 I thought most of us didn't know, because it came as a big surprise when that was all being dug up not so long ago. And certainly I know about Reach 2. So
Oh, yeah,
anyway,
Reach
what,
6 is completely redoing the piers there,
Right.
demolished and replaced.
so in looking at this and then reviewing and thank you, Becky, and that, so that was the plan, I had not seen before. So other than that, and frankly, I had these detailed drawings from Arcadis never presented, nor did I necessarily have to be, but are there things that people read or thought about that they want to add of concerns or thoughts that we can include, because we are writing a resolution?
You guys did do wetland mitigation, I think, and there was like credits going to Sawmill Creek Mitigation Bank, and I think you said that you should look more closely at having that mitigation locally. So you could reemphasize that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I of the resolution we already wrote. I think writing a whole new resolution might be overkill on this one if they haven't changed any of their plan. I think I'm a little bit with Jeff. Like, if we want to submit it again with a letter, that's fine.
Yeah, that was my original idea, but Tammy wanted to have a resolution.
Well, we can have a resolution that basically does the same thing and then and point out in particular, including but not limited to the sections A, B, C, and D that we think directly deal with this.
I think that's a good solution. Can we get agreement there?
Yeah, yes.
I'm seeing two hands up. Wendy, are you again asking something, or are you okay with that idea?
Can you repeat that again? I don't think I heard that.
I was suggesting that the resolution would be really akin to a cover letter sending this thing on, but it would be a resolution, with the whereases would recite whatever this thing is we got from Army Corps, and the fact that it's asking for public comment, and then our comment that, point out that, we've made a resolution on the, DEIS attached. That included commenting on aspects of the project that, relate to in-water work. Which, include sections 3.5, natural resources, wetlands, and whatever else that are in there that relate to that. And that these are our comments, or whatever it's called, that they're asking for to the, what does it say? Sort of a survey.
Fair.
I mean, I'm not sure that I see the point of restating what we've said.
There's also something actually going on at Belvedere Plaza. I don't know if you, I sent it just a little while ago. Before I got there. They have, at Belvedere Plaza, they have orange tape up, construction tape. And, there's something going on.
Because Becky's still there, and she can fill us in on that. Yes. Becky, are you still here?
I am sorry, I couldn't click the buttons fast enough.
Oh, thank you. Can you fill us in on what's going on at Belvedere Plaza that Sarah's talking about?
I will look into exactly what's happening. I know that there has been, certain things that have been going on, throughout the project, but I don't know the exact specifics, but I'll find out exactly what that is and get that back to Zach for you guys.
All right, there's also some kind of, construction vehicle that's parked on the Esplanade, and it seems to be connected to it. I've seen people going back and forth, workmen.
Is that in the same
So it
Belvedere
does-
Plaza area?
It's just past it,
Okay.
where the, Esplanade gets thicker across from the rink.
Okay.
Between the rink and it just, to me, it looks like they're starting, I don't know, what they've been doing at Rector Place. It looks to me as though they're actually physically checking things. But, obviously I have no knowledge, but it's been 2 days now and I've seen quite a few people.
Gotcha. I don't want to misquote, so let me find out exactly what it is and I'll get it back to you guys.
Thank you.
As I read this notice, it looks like almost everything we have to say in our resolution is relevant, because what they are asking for comments on, the decision will reflect the national concern for both protection and utilization of important research. The benefit reasonably may be expected to accrue from the project, and, so it's sort of a cost benefit. It's going to have some impact on killing fish. It's a benefit to this project. And they're not only looking at whether the fish are going to be killed. And so I think our resolution, it's not only whatever happens relates to the wetlands, but what we say about the rest of the project becomes relevant as well. So
Yeah, I was very happy to catch it and to be able to do this
Yeah.
because of that, I mean, I think Army Corps should know what this community thought and spend so much time hiring George James to help us and all that, so I'm glad they'll get it. I agree with you, I think a letter actually is a slightly more, the more logical way to do it.
But you can, the resolution, Tammy wants a resolution, we can,
Right.
it's effectively the same thing.
There are hands up as well.
Okay, so, is it Nick?
Resolution to write a letter.
All right, well, okay, we know the resolution is gonna be this, it's gonna simply describe that this is attached. And if there's somebody else, yeah.
Yes, sufficient.
Okay, so,
There is a resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ushma. Ushma? Oh, she's the, okay.
All right, need to unmute myself. I just want to make sure I heard everything. Is that the plan that was submitted, I heard, didn't take into account anything that was in our resolution, right? So the resolution would still be relevant because they didn't make any changes to the plan that was submitted. I think that's what you guys said. I just want to make sure I understood.
That's a different point. That's actually not what we said, but it's
No.
an interesting
Yeah.
point, but I
Oh, whoops, I guess. I don't know what I heard then, but that's what I just want to
So-
make sure.
Well, I sent it around to everyone, so you should have a copy, so you can refer to it, but the public notice included plans that have not changed, to my knowledge. I had not seen them, I think Jeff did.
Well, I've seen versions of some of these, but these are dated December 2024, so.
Right, so we did not see these, so you're right, because we did not see these, we didn't have a presentation in December for Valley Park City, so these were new plans, but the design did not change. And so our comments on the draft environmental impact statement would, I assume, not change either, because it's based on the same concept design. So all we're doing here is letting the Army Corps know that this community had the following reservations as identified in our resolution from September.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say reservations, comments, some.
Comments.
Yeah, as we submit this.
And then I have one more question. Is there a difference between a letter and a resolution? I mean, this might just be a stupid community board meeting, like you write a letter or you want a resolution, does it matter?
Well, the resolution is something that's written as a document that is, the whole board has signed on to as a resolution, this policy. A letter is something coming from the board chair that is,
If you want to
identified.
officially speak, we need a resolution.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying those two questions.
But we have the resolution.
Yeah.
Right? We did the resolution, so. you
Well,
can
but
refer-
we're sitting, I mean, I don't think it makes any difference, but, but if Tammy prefers a resolution, I understand why she does, and the resolution can simply, recite what this is.
Yeah.
Basically contain the same thing that would otherwise be in a cover letter and say, and, our comments consist of the following as contained in our resolution on the DEIS.
Zach, do you have
I
any
hate to
thoughts
be-
on this? Just
You
a
did
second,
to
Zach,
me,
I know
I
you were part of the
think
conversation, but I
I'm
wanted
like-
to have a letter and you were there.
Resolved.
I mean, do you feel this is partly your history? Just work or?
I don't think it matters too much either way.
Well,
I think if you're making the same points and you're doing it via letter pointing to resolution or resolution pointing to resolution, I don't think that it matters a whole lot.
Well, there's one little difference. It means we have to bring this, a resolution has to go to a vote. I don't see the need for a vote since we've already voted on this resolution.
Yeah.
It's simply just
Saying
a
it's
comment.
just a lot of time, but you have to write up the
I
resolution.
don't think we need to do that unless we're making some changes to it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of,
I
it
think
almost
that's
implies that we're making
Right, so
changes
this
and we're
committee
not.
sounding
That's how I-
unanimous on the floor, but we're
Thank you.
gonna say to Tammy, write a letter.
So, yeah, Tammy
So,
should write a
but
letter
it's-
because we've already taken the position.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's what it is, and I think.
And resend the resolution.
Oh, of course,
We've
yeah.
already made a resolution.
And, but
Right.
it has to be by March, yeah. and
So this,
March.
remember, this isn't going to the Battery Park City Authority, this is going to the Army Corps of Engineers. And that's what would.
CC
and it-
everybody.
Well, CC maybe.
So
but
then
it
you're
says-
saying just
It
make
all
a few
caps, it
changes.
says all comments must be in writing, they must be
Right.
emailed to phone, so by 7. And so,
All right, well, thank you for looking at it. I think that's what we'll tell Tammy. I think that is a better use of our time, but if she insists, then we'll
you want to
we'll do what we, yes.
Then
do
we'll
it
just
exactly.
change a couple of whereas, then Jeff,
exactly
we
what
just
we
change,
did
we
to
change the
start.
beginning whereas. That's
Or just change
So I
the date.
don't, you wouldn't change, you don't want to change anything because that's what's been voted on.
Or you add in
You
you
could-
add in a,
He could write a letter, as long as
if,
it's
if,
consistent with that resolution.
if
he
she
could
wants
write-
another.
Well, I think
Then
that-
we would have to add in, well, whereas there's been a public notice and and whatever, right?
Right, that would be the whereases, but then we would say our comments consist of the resolution,
Yes.
dated whatever, and send it on, attached.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I just feel like she's gonna have, I realize that she's
But I
thinking
agree.
that other members of the public have other things to say that are being included or anyone else on the board. I don't, yeah. that doesn't sound-
I mean, these are the kinds of things that we thought about and discussed.
Yeah, okay, so let us hope for the letter, if that's what we're aiming for, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so I think that's it.
Is that
9
it?
o'clock, I
Oh,
think we're
good.
done. Thank you, that was a long meeting, but we had a lot to cover, and that was.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, sorry about that, but well, that can sometimes.
Will definitely help you. I mean, in theory, anyone would give that into should be able.
Thank you, thank you, thank